2020 was my last year of high school. We kind of came up with this idea of Cam's Corner to start a podcast.
WPRI12. What do you think was like the biggest thing you learned from that internship?
Networking, soaking everything in, and just getting as many reps as you can. When I have an idea in my head, like I just want to take the bull by the horns and just do that one idea. First met them, like they were just like gazelles, like on the football field. Like they were just super fast. Like they seemed like superhuman in a way when I was a kid. He's just like as good as it gets. Everybody that she's involved with, she's always trying to uplift people.
How did you know you were ready for that jump?
Job in Missouri, they were like that Friday they interviewed me. They're like, yep, like we want to bring you on. Can you start next week? But I always say it, like my 10-year plan, like when I'm in my early 30s, like I want to be in the NBA, and I know I'm going to be in the NBA. Maybe in the future, maybe make it NBA centric. I don't know.
What was like your reaction and going through your head when you were selected to be a captain?
When he told me that I was a captain, I'm like, all right, I'm still going to hone this responsibility and take it like in full stride, no matter what. I hope this is a first step into getting to like my end goal in the NBA.
This is Best for Business with your host, Coach C, Chris Sanders.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel for another episode of Best for Business, another bonus episode. Now, when I first started a podcast, this is the guy I went to for everything, to saw how we do it. He has such a successful podcast with Cam's Corner. Cam, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, of course, Chris. I love the energy. I love it. Let's do it.
I learned from the best, man, but let's talk about you. So you mentioned that you played basketball and all that, but when was like that first moment that you realized you wanted to do something, whether it was broadcast and radio? What was that moment for you?
I would say it was probably 2020. So 2020 was my last year of high school. And like somewhat a freshman year of college, and it was all online. I didn't know really like what I was going to do. I knew I wanted to do sports, but everything was shut down. So like they had no groups like on campus of, programs and all the stuff that the universities and colleges have now. So I was like, all right, what can I do? What can I do? And I always tell the story, like me and my buddies, Nic and Tom, we kind of came up with this idea of Cam's Corner to start a podcast. So ever since then, I just was like, you know what, I'm going to keep up with this either every week or whenever I can, because I'm not getting paid. So it's like not like someone's telling me to do it every week, but I was like, I want to stay consistent so people have something to turn to, or they look at me like, okay, he's consistent and he really wants to do this. So I did that for a while, and then once I went down on campus at Rick, I found one of my old high school classmates, Cody Shalafu. I always give him credit. He's the man. He was a senior and I was a freshman at Johnston, and I saw him calling a game. Well, first off, the student programs at Rick weren't the best, but I saw him calling a game on for like Rick, and it was like a stream because Rick was Division III. So I saw him. I was like, hey, what's up, man? I haven't seen you in so long. And he goes, yeah, like, what have you been doing? I'm like, actually, I want to get into what you're doing. I want to do play-by-play. And I saw like the public address people doing their things. And I was like, I want to get into this. This is exactly what I want to do. And he's like, you want to sit and like watch me call a game? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I sat with him and he's calling the game and he was doing great. I'm like, oh my God, dude, how long have you been doing this? And he's like, oh, well, I went to Endicott, and, he was telling me his story and everything. And the game ends and I'm like, dude, I would love to stay in contact. I want to do this. So then he's like, yeah, we're always looking for people. And I'm like, really? No one wants to do this? He's like, no, you'd be surprised. So long story short, like a week goes by, and the SID at the time, Scott Gibson, I think he's still there. But they gave me a shot. I was doing public address. First they put me on the camera, and I was like, oh, great, here we go. This isn't going to be like what I expected, but I bit the bullet and did those things. And then eventually did public address. So I was like the in-arena voice, and then I got on the mic at Rick, and then, long story short, now I'm here because from that point, I just got all those internships and then transferred to URI, and now I'm in Joplin, Missouri.
So when you talk about Cam's Corner, I always wondered, what is Ice Productions? That's something you thought of?
Yeah, I've actually never been asked that question before. Ice Productions is just like, it's like, I guess it's my company. I mean, like I said, I don't get paid for anything that I do yet. But I've had some pretty cool guests come on. They think it's a credible podcast, which I love, and I'm happy and grateful for. But so my last name is Iasimone, and a lot of people call me Cam Ice, and a lot of people call my dad Ice. So like back in the day, people called him Ray Ice. So now I'm kind of like taking it over. When I was a kid, people called me Iceman. I mean, that's kind of like, I'm not a kid anymore, so it'd be a little weird. Not weird, but it's kind of shortened down to Ice. So people would call me just Ice. Like Coach Dan would call me Ice, or even Scott, your uncle, he would call me Ice sometimes. So And then I was like, you know, I can make that like my tagline or company. So I just put that underneath, and it kind of like completes Cam's Corner, like the name and the
Damn,
brand.
that's genius. But
Yeah.
when you talk about your internships, when we talk about WPRI12, what do you think was like the biggest thing you learned from that internship?
The biggest thing I learned. I think the biggest thing is not to like rush, like kind of just soak everything in. Because every day is like go, go, go. But you're doing all these like amazing things and you're always trying to learn as you're going along. So like for example, we would do a lot of like high school things and probably similar to what I'm gonna be doing now, because tomorrow is actually my first day.
Wow.
But yeah, a lot of high school things and like different things outside of like major sports. So I was like, oh, I mean, this is great, but I don't know if I really want to get into like anchoring. I still want to do the play-by-play route, but the internship itself was like, it's good to put on the resume. But then we started doing like Patriot stuff, and I'm like, all right, if I have to do high school stuff to do the big time stuff, it's like I'm gonna do it all and just soak it in and get all the reps that I need to do. That's another thing too, is reps. If you hone your craft and just like the little things and just like I said, take it day by day. Know that you're getting the good reps in with like the high school, like the college, and that stuff's great too. Don't get me wrong.
Right. Yeah.
But you'll appreciate like the big time stuff. Like for me, it's gonna be like local high school, Division II college athletics, which is huge out here, that I wasn't aware of. But we're gonna be doing a lot of Chiefs coverage too. So when I get the reps with that, and it'll just make me appreciate the big time Chiefs coverage and all that kind of stuff. So definitely reps, soaking in the moment, and trying to put your best foot forward, like in every aspect. I mean, that was in anything that I did, but that internship, like I met like all the people I've met, probably a majority are from that internship. So,
Wow.
yeah, networking is the biggest thing. So networking, soaking everything in, and just getting as many reps as you can.
Nice. And I saw that social media post yesterday. Are you officially a Chiefs fan?
I guess so.
Oh,
I
nice.
mean, they were going to be doing a lot of Chiefs coverage, like I mentioned. So, I gotta get more familiar with the players and like trends, injuries, all that kind of stuff. So that's gonna be fun.
And then you talked about when you came to Hendricken and talked to us interning with the Sports Hub. What
Mm.
was like one of your favorite moments from doing the Sports Hub?
Favorite moments. Well, when the station was like not like closing, they were moving to a different location. I can't remember where it is now in Boston, but I think it's in Waltham actually.
Mhm.
So we were in like South Dorchester, I think. But they were in that stage of moving, and the studio was kind of like all broken down. And the guys were at like training camp a lot, but like some of the times they would be in the studio. So when they were in the studio, they'd have some guys come in for like live reads and do like commercial ads and stuff like that. And then Matthew Slater comes in one day, um, and he like walked by like the glass, and I was like, oh, there's Matthew Slater. So then we had like a 5 minute or like a 3 minute like break like
Mhm.
before the next segment, and there was cornhole out there, and like Hardy is one of the hosts. He's actually one of the hosts now in the mornings. He was the third host for Zolak and Beetle at the time, and he brought me in. He's like, "You want to go play cornhole?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." We had like 3 minutes. He's like, "Oh, Cam, come play cornhole." And then I was Matthew Slater's partner for
Wow.
cornhole. We're just like playing cornhole in like an empty studio. That was cool. And then I met Ray Bork, one of my dad's favorite hockey players. I met him, and I got one of his jerseys signed. It's actually hanging up on my wall.
Nice.
That was cool. But yeah, playing cornhole with Matthew Slater was probably like one of the coolest things.
Did you guys win or?
We didn't keep score because it was so quick.
Yeah.
But I'm a competitive guy, so I'd like to say that we won.
And for the Sports Hub, I remember a while ago, it might still be in your intro. Didn't at one point they talked about like how you had a podcast?
Yeah, they did it off the rip. It was like the first day.
I was gonna ask, did you know about that was coming or no?
No, I mean I knew that I was gonna be on for a little bit. They
Mhm.
they had like a segment at the end of the show, like
Yeah.
introducing intern Cam, and I didn't know that I was gonna like be in there because like backstage, not like backstage, but like back in the production room, Tom Morgan, they call him T-Bone. He's the greatest. Learned a lot from him. Tyler Milliken does a lot with the baseball segment. He's a big baseball advocate. So they were great. They were awesome to me, and I would always be with them. And they had mics back there, so I'm thinking, oh, maybe I'll sit in Tyler's seat or stand up with Tom or whatever. And then Zolak brings me in, and he goes, "Yeah, Cam, I need a glass of water. Can you go get me a glass of water?" And like the kitchen was like right across
Mhm.
the studio where you walk in. So I was like, "All right." And Tom's like, "It's back there to the left." And I got it. I found it, brought it out, and they're like, "Yeah, come sit down." So then I sat down. I'm like, "Wow, this is pretty cool." And like, there's no like audience, so it didn't feel like I was on TV, or
Right.
it was
Yeah.
kind of like this, like I'm just talking to you, or like
Mhm.
it didn't feel like I was on and then my phone was blowing up and like people sending me videos in the car and like they're hearing me in the car. Like that was cool.
Wow.
But then yeah, we talked about, what did we talk about? We talked about like my podcast. We talked about like URI because I wasn't there yet. I was transferring there. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of the things that I had. Like I only had like 50 followers on Twitter. I mean, I don't have a lot right now, but I mean, I was just starting to get going with everything.
Yeah.
But they took a liking to me, and then when the documentary came out on Danny, they talked with Joe. I think it was because that was like one of their playoff. It was like Joe's first year as the head coach, and they were like in the play. I think it was like the round they played against Philly. And they were talking to him on a Thursday. And they're like, "Oh, this documentary's coming out, and your dad, our former intern." And they were like plugging like the documentary, and I was like, that was probably one of my coolest moments too. Even though I wasn't working there, like that was super cool.
So when you talked about Rick and watching your friend call the game, and you eventually, I don't know if you started with the camera. Do you remember that first game you were a part of?
Ooh, first game behind the mic. I can't remember the team. But when I look back at it, like we would do, like they would want us to go on like 3, maybe like even 5 minutes before tip. And it's like, there's no, like when you would see like the stuff that I did for ESPN, there's like dual cameras, they got cameras up top. Like it's a Division I program. They have big productions. And Rick was literally just a camera, like above the bleachers. And it just went back and forth. They didn't have a sideline camera. They didn't have anything. Which is like, it's okay. Like I didn't expect anything. I didn't expect anything. As a sophomore. But like they were just like, yeah, you're gonna be on for 5 minutes, just like talk about the game. And I'm like, I mean, I didn't know what like spot charts were. I didn't know like really what to do. And Cody would actually write in his like notebook. He would write stuff down, and he might have had charts on his computer. I don't remember, but I know later down the line when we did baseball, he would do it because he was a big baseball guy. But he would write in his notebook, and he would write down like, tagline, like storylines, or like even like opens, whatever, player information. And I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna do that too. And Cody was like, yeah, he just kind of like threw me into the fire, which was good because I learned. He's like, do what you want to do. So I was like, all right, I see him writing stuff down. I don't know much about it. I'm gonna start writing stuff down. So before the game or the night before, I'm like writing stuff, like looking at the players, and I wrote a little thing. And I look back, I've looked back at it like a year or two or whatever it was, and I'm like, oh my God, it's like night and day compared to like how I am now. Just like so much more comfortable in front of the camera. But like the biggest thing that kind of like made me more comfortable with it was when I did public address. I'll never forget, like I was doing Cam's Corner, and like the biggest thing about Cam's Corner is like corner 3, like the Peter Griffin. I don't know if you know that story, but like my friends always tell me like I'm good at voice impressions here and there or whatever. And Peter Griffin was a big one, when like that episode where like he's always going to the corner and he's hitting all the corner threes and he doesn't miss. They were like, yeah, put that in your intro. So I put that in my intro, and I had it as like a little as a little joke. And like in high school, like I was a big corner 3 guy. Like that was like my spot. So when I did public address, like my dad always tells me to this day, you got to put a little flair on it, like make it you, but don't like force it. So I always try to think about that in my head, like, oh, what can I do to, make it mine and make it memorable for people, to be like, oh, that's that guy. So shout out Damian Tucker. Damian's doing his thing down in Florida. He used to play for Rick, and I'll never forget it. I have a video on my phone from the broadcast. Gets the ball kicked to him in the corner. He shoots it, makes it, and in my head, I'm like, if he hits this, I'm gonna yell like corner 3, and I'm gonna do it. So he hits it, and I do it, and the bench looks at me, and they start dying laughing, and I'm like, but like in a good way, like they're like, that was great, like you got to do that again, you got to do it again. So I'm like, all right, but I didn't do it for like the away team. If the away team did it, I still brought the energy, but I didn't like it was for Rick, like it was predominantly for Rick. So then they would keep doing it. Somebody would shoot a 3. They wouldn't even make it. Like the ball was in the air. The bench would look at me like waiting for me to go corner 3, and like it was nice. That was probably like my first time I can think like, okay, yeah, that was like my first like welcome to Rick or moment, whatever you want to call it.
And then you did sideline reporting, right, for football?
For URI, yeah.
How was that?
It was cool. Like I got a whole different dynamic to it. Because all I wanted to do, like I was when I have an idea in my head, like I just want to take the bull by the horns and just do that one idea. I have to get better at trying to do different things at once, in a sense. And I think I definitely got better at that with all the stuff I've done. But Yeah. So Sideline, I did when I went to URI, there was a program or a newspaper called the Good 5 Cent Cigar,
Mm-hmm.
and they would have newscasts. So that was like my first chance to get on camera. And I wasn't big. Like, I mean, I know writing is part of the process. You have to be a good writer to be a good anchor, and you have to be a good anchor to be a good play-by-play guy. So everything kind of like goes into one. Be a good podcast host and be on camera to do whatever. So,
Right.
it's like I got the podcast thing going. I'm gonna keep getting better and better. But I was like, all right, let me get into like everyone was telling me you gotta do the cigar. You gotta get used to writing articles. You gotta get used to deadlines. Used to like the length of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, all right. So I went down to the Good 5 Cent Cigar, and they were like, we have newscasts, like we have like opportunities to go to games and like you can make a package, you can do whatever you want with it, but it'll go into our like 15-20 minute newscast, like recapping stuff around campus. So like they would have an anchor and it'd be like, oh, I'm blah blah blah, and this is 5 Cent Cigar newscast, whatever. And they'd be like, "Oh, this day on campus we did this," and then the news around that's like local news, but it's for
Right.
URI. And they'd be like, all right, now here's so Nathan Robillard, he was a huge help too. He would usually do like the anchoring. He'd be like, oh, here's Nathan with sports. But when I was there as a junior, it was Kyle Standing. He was like whoever the sports editor was, they would anchor. So Kyle was my junior year, Nathan was my senior year, and they would kick it to them. And they'd be like, oh, our Cam Iasimone has the story on the URI football, and then they would kick to my package. So my first ever time doing it was actually at Bryant. When URI came down and played Bryant, the first game of the season, my junior year, and I was with Aniekan Okon, who's down in Virginia. He just got promoted as sports director, and he's only 23 years old, so
Wow.
he's doing his thing. Props to
Yeah.
him. He's been a huge help for me as well. Now that I take this anchoring route, but yeah, he was down there, and I'm like, hey man, like I remember because I met him in the summer trying to get used to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll never forget my camera died like in the fourth quarter. I didn't have anything to record on for the press conferences, so I used my phone. And then I had to shoot my stand-ups. I didn't do my like, oh, today this blah blah blah, whatever. I
Yeah.
didn't do that yet. That's at the end of the game. So he's like, you know what? You can use my stuff. You use my spotlights. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, man. I'm not in no rush. I'm like, wow, okay. So he let me use it, and then I put a package together. And like the next day, I had it done because I like doing it quick. I don't want to like wait on it.
Yeah.
Kind of simulate like how the deadlines are now. And they were like, "This is great," and I'm like, "You think so?" And they're like, "This is." They were surprised that I got it like as close to how production is as possible without knowing anything about it, without
Yeah.
knowing, you know. And I'm like, "Wow, that's pretty cool." So I just kind of did that same thing my junior year as the newscast guy for football. So I
Right.
did the same thing my senior year, but they got me like an actual job and got internship credits for like their digital correspondence. So I would kind of do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously it was way better. It was better production. It was better. I had better like equipment to use and stuff like that. So it was more put together, but that was cool. And like I got super close with the players. That's like the best thing, right?
Nice.
When you're
Yeah.
on the sidelines. I did a few weight room videos for Cam's Corner, like working out with the guys on the field, like running routes. Like it was awesome. Football was like my favorite part. Like, and I know that I'm not as knowledgeable as for football to be able to call a game.
Mm-hmm.
I could probably get away with it, but like reporting for football, like that's one of my favorite things to do. But play by play is obviously like my bread and butter for basketball. But football was fun. It was super fun.
And then one thing I think you're killing it right now is the content you put out. So how big, especially in what you're doing, is content? I didn't even realize your website. I was looking at that yesterday. Like that's great too. So how big is content, especially with the podcast and everything you're doing with sports?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't really check out the website, but I have it because it's like more professional. So if I were to go to like a job like this or whatever, I can just send them camscorner.org and it's like all my stuff is there, rather than being like, here's my Instagram and then here's like a reel I posted like a week ago. Like it's more so like everything's there. The audio audio episodes are there. The YouTube link is there. So everything is like on one, and it's kind of like it's easier to kind of follow. So I keep up with that. I do like the audio episodes, but it's more so people like listen to it on YouTube because they want to see it. They want to see me interacting with the guest or similar to this. But the content wise, like I was doing the same, like my reel would be like this zoom, like this frame, and it'd be sideways and it'd be like a minute long and like, or like even like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And it would just be like a straight clip of just talking. That's how I would start to post stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. Like I didn't really know. I didn't know much about it, so I just kept doing it and doing it. And then I went to URI, and I met a few social media kids, and they're like, Cam, your guests are great. The way that you hold yourself is great, but like the content, like you're not really keeping up with trends. Like, can we like give you some suggestions? So I'm like, yeah, sure. So my friend Nando, shout out Nando, he's doing his thing with Barstool. He's actually
Wow.
working with Barstool, and I think he's in Manhattan right now.
Mhm.
But he's got some things in the works. But he was great on helping me figure out algorithms and how to like actually make an engaging reel. And then once I started making content how I do now, that's how I started my like middle of junior year maybe.
Mhm.
Um it was like, or maybe like the end of junior year. But like Barstool Roadie wanted to work with me when I did Rhode Island stuff. So like when we were in the weight room with the football team, or when I would call games and do like a split screen reel of me calling like a bucket or like a 30-second thing of a
Yeah.
montage of the game. Barstool, like Nando ran the Barstool account, so they would be like, yeah, like let's collab and let's put it on like both of our pages. So that
Nice.
got me a lot of attraction too. And he's like, the quality's great. Like just keep doing what you're doing, and if you want to add different things, like just
Mhm.
keep up that quality. So ever since then, I kept the same style, and then I try to think of new thing. Like I don't have I mean, I have a guest plan for next week, but like in that downtime where I'm not really doing anything and I'm moving and everything, all this stuff's happening. It's like, oh, it's cool to kind of keep like an update. Like I'm not really used to just filming myself everywhere I go, but I mean,
Yeah.
this is a new location for me, so um I think showing the people like what's going on, just like little quick thing, nothing like crazy, and kind of make it entertaining and kind of how I am as a
Yeah.
person. Uh, yeah, like stuff like that. So I'm gonna try to keep doing things like that, but I'm not used to just like picking up my phone and like filming
Yeah.
myself everywhere I go.
Yeah. And two guys you talk about all the time, but I'm curious because you've known them for a while, Nic and Tom. I
Yeah,
assume you've known them majority of your life.
yeah, I've known them since like seventh grade, sixth, seventh grade.
So what
So.
have you seen like their transition be from all the way from Hendricken to Stonehill to where they are now?
Oh, just super proud of them. I
Yeah.
mean, they put in the work. I mean, they said it on one of my first ever episodes. It's like you got to surround yourself with people that work just as hard as you, or
Mhm.
even harder, because that'll inspire you to just keep going and try to be like the next man up in any aspect of life. So, when I first met them, like they were just like gazelles, like on the football field. Like they were
Yeah.
just super fast. Like they seemed like superhuman in a way when I was a kid. Because I was like, how am I gonna get that? I can't get that fast. I
Yeah.
wasn't a football player, but
Mhm.
even in basketball, like just like menaces on defense. Like I couldn't get by them. Um, but then I got a little taller and it was a little easier to shoot over them. But
Yeah.
outside of that, they were just super athletic, and like it
Mhm.
inspired me to get better.
Nice.
It sucks that they didn't come. I mean, I'm glad they went to Hendricken because it benefited them. But
Yeah.
I would have loved to play basketball with them in high school. We probably would have won a few. We probably would have been like a championship team. I would
Nice.
think. But yeah, like I said, just super proud of them. They were always champions at Hendricken, even if they didn't win. Every year they were
Mhm.
going to the championship, doing interviews, like just so many things that I wanted to kind of emulate.
Mhm.
I always had them in my corner as like a friend. Like even though I
Nice.
wasn't like the top athlete in the state, now that they see me doing this, it's like they want to support me and they want to see me thrive in it, and I want to see them thrive in anything they're doing now. I think I know they're down in Florida now, full-time jobs and everything. So they left before I did,
Mhm.
and that was tough to see them go. So then when I had to leave and leave all my friends that were in Rhode Island, it kind of gave me a little deja vu when they left. So
Mhm.
um, I hope they're watching. I'm definitely gonna show them this because I think you're the first person to actually ask me about them, because
Yeah.
I always tell the story about how like they kind of helped me out with
Yeah.
like the name and everything. But um, it's like the beauty of FaceTime is amazing. Like you can just pick up the phone and talk. We talk every day.
Nice.
Um, it sucks I can't physically see them, but we're only a plane ride away. When I get time off, I'm definitely gonna see them and things like that. So yeah, they killed it at Stonehill too. Like it took them time to
Mhm.
really work their way up the depth chart and work their way into the system, but they're just super well respected because of how hard they work. Um,
Yeah.
they're two like the hardest working people I know, and it shows now in what they're doing as far as their jobs. They're down in Florida, like networking, and
Nice.
so I give them all the props in the world, and wish them well too.
Another Hendricken guy I want to ask you about, Stone Freeman. What did you learn from him?
Yeah, Stone was like Stone was like the third guest I think on Camp's Corner.
Wow.
Yeah, like the third, and he came on twice, I think, two, three times. But he was one of the first people I hit up too because I knew he did a lot of play-by-play stuff.
Mhm.
And I mean, now he's working a lot with like the NIL, and he's like part of Rhode Excellence. He's like the director of that. So like
Yeah.
NIL deals for college students. And he told me down the line, he was like, Cam, like I realized like I didn't want to call 180 games of baseball a year or whatever, like to do like internships and stuff. Like, probably not that much, but it's a lot. Like baseball is a lot when you're doing it every other day. But he was like, I don't know, I just love college athletics. I kind of like I still want to do like the play-by-play stuff. Like I think he's still doing it for football, but he's just like as good as it gets as far as uh like like on camera personality. Like his voice, even like off the air, is just like sharp. It's super sharp. So I took a lot from him as far as how to hold yourself, how to pace yourself, and how to network. Like I always say, like network is like the biggest thing. But he was a person that I talked to like right off the rip, and I made like me and my dad went to a URI game. I don't know if it was my dad or one of my friends, but we went to a URI game while I was at Rick, and I was like, oh, there's Stone. There's like all these people that I know, and I'm like, I'm gonna go say hi. And he's like, oh, what about the security guard? I'm like, I'm gonna go on the court, go say hi.
Yeah.
So I went by them. Like they thought I was like a student or whatever. I don't know. I went by them, went on the court, said what's up to Stone. He's like, oh, I'm glad you came by. Like we got to talk again soon. And this was when I was at Rick. So when I went to URI and I was doing all these things, like I would always go to him and be like, hey, like how can I like get better? And even when I was looking for jobs, like what kind of jobs did you look into? And he told me like what I just told you. He's like, I just wanted to stay around college athletics, and if the play-by-play route is still there, he's definitely gonna take it. So I hope I'm sure he's going to stay around football because like I think that's his bread and butter. I could be wrong, but I mean, football, like he's the voice for TV on Flow Sports. So he does a great job too. I mean, he's got like that announcer voice, and I don't try to change my voice when I hear people, but I try to emulate it as far as like cadence and pace and just like dominance as far as like the rasp that goes into like big calls or even like on camera. Like if you're anchoring and you're personable in yourself. I learned that a lot from him. He said the biggest thing, the quote that I learned from him that I take with me every day, it's like, be uniquely, like be yourself. Like that's how you want to get people to recognize you. You don't want to be like a different version of yourself to make people recognize you. Like don't change like who you are. Was the gist of like what he was trying to say. I can't remember the exact quote, but he was just like be yourself and you'll get recognized because you're so uniquely you. So yeah, he's been a huge help.
Yeah, and then another person I want to ask you about, this is how actually I was introduced to you. Tell me about the progression you've seen from Paige.
Paige is doing her thing too. I mean, another person from Rhode Island. When you're working with people from Rhode Island, and they're trying to do their thing, like similar to you, like yourself, that has a goal. It's hard not to root for them. You know, it's hard not to root for the people that are putting in the work every day, that you're around every day.
Yeah.
Especially someone like Paige, who I worked super closely with at URI. Like we would tell each other like things that are going on or like how to get better or like who she met, who I met, and like how to like kind of build off of that. Like again, it's all about a network. So we were kind of trying to, I mean, not just me but everybody that she's involved with, she's always trying to uplift people, make sure they're on their A game so she can be on her A game. But she's like a sponge, just like myself. She's always trying to learn from the next person to get better. And taking that advice from Stone and just being herself.
Right.
So yeah, she's gotten now she's at WPRI. She's doing a lot of the digital stuff. So from like day one, from when I met her to now, it's like it's like night and day. Like all of us, it's like we see the where we're at. That's why we appreciate everything that we do, because we saw where we started, and just to see that growth is incredible. So I'm wishing her well. I hope she moves out eventually and goes somewhere, because I know like her biggest thing when I interviewed her pretty recently was she doesn't want to move away from her family yet. And I get that. I didn't really want to yet either, but taking that leap of faith is what will separate you from a pack. So, I mean, if it is in Rhode Island, if she does get her shot in Rhode Island, like on camera, kind of like similar to what I'm doing, I wish her the best. I hope she does. So, I mean, I know she's got that on camera stuff as far as digital, but I know that's not exactly what she wants to do. So I hope, I mean, the cards are in her favor because she's just putting in the work every day. So you put in that work, it's going to happen.
So yeah, let me go into that. You mentioned it on that podcast with Paige. You asked her pretty early on in the episode, like if the opportunity came to go somewhere for a job opportunity, even if it's not in Rhode Island, would you take it? And I don't know, I assume something was already in the works for you. So how did you know you were ready for that jump? Because a lot of people, I feel it's hard for them, especially at first, but you went all in for that.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't hit me until like I had to leave, really, or even like when I got here, and like my dad just left yesterday. It didn't really hit me until then because now I'm actually alone.
Yeah.
But I always say it, like my 10-year plan, like when I'm in my early 30s, like I want to be in the NBA, and I know I'm going to be in the NBA because of like how hard I work. And that's not like to say it in like a cocky way or anything
Oh
like that.
yeah.
I'm just super confident in what
Oh
I
yeah.
do, and everybody's got goals for themselves, and that's one of mine. So, but I always said like I wanted to do like play by play, and speaking with Bill Pito, MSG 150's studio host for the Knicks and the Rangers.
Mm.
I had him on Cam's corner, and he said like, Cam, like I wasn't really focused on the play by play route. I knew I wanted to do anchoring, and at that time I didn't really want to do anchoring, but he's like, I knew I wanted to do that, so I wanted to get a full-time job, and that's obviously like there's no freelance anchoring, at least I don't think. Like
Right.
I think there probably is, but um, in Bill's case, he wanted to get a full-time job like out of school. Um, he worked on the NFL Network with Chris Berman, and like all these legendary guys. And he's like, yeah, it was intimidating, but like I had a full-time job and I got to work the ranks. And like, long story short, now he's where he's at with the Knicks and the Rangers at MSG. So I was like, if I can get a full-time job as like doing anchoring reporting, once I get like, accumulated and used to like the system and like the area, maybe I could branch out and freelance. Like once I'm used to everything, I have my off days, I got my schedule, and I'm kind of getting into a rhythm. Because right now I'm not in a rhythm. I don't really know
Right.
what's to come. So that's why I'm kind of nervous anticipating that start date. But I'm ready to go. But before that, I was like, I'm willing to go wherever. And like my dad knew that. My mom's like, oh, what if you do stuff around here? And I'm like, I mean, there's not really a lot of opportunities around here. And she's like, okay, because it wasn't like a real thing yet.
Yeah.
And then once I had an opportunity in Idaho, and like it just took too long to hear back. And like I know the job process, it takes a few weeks, but this job in Missouri, they were like that Friday they interviewed me. They're like, yep, like we want to bring you
Wow.
on. Can you start next week or like 2 weeks? I'm like, I got to get a little bit more time. And I said it like they were super, super nice, and they were super like adaptable to like what I wanted, like as far as moving my date back. And they were like, yep, that's okay. August 12th is great, which is tomorrow.
Yeah. Wow.
So they're like, yep, it was like about a month I had to kind of regroup and say bye, soak everything in Rhode Island. But I was ready. I'm always ready for whatever opportunity comes my way. But I'm never like an anxious person. So I wouldn't say I'm anxious now. I'm just more so anticipating what's to come. So I just want to make sure I'm always putting my best foot forward. Um, and my on-camera presence is still there, and I know it's there because I do this podcast and I'm talking to you, and I'm doing a lot of stuff like that on the side, so I'm not worried about that. But just making sure I'm always sharp, not trying to overthink things. So I think the second, like probably like a few months before I graduated, I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go, like I'm ready to
Right.
work.
Nice. And then you talked about is play by play. Is that like the dream?
Yeah, it is. It still is, but like I was talking with my dad the other day. If I can get any kind of gig in the NBA, like
Yeah.
down the line of my career, and I'm on camera and I'm anchoring and I'm talking about basketball and like the NBA, like that's the dream. I mean,
Nice.
it's kind of transitioned a little bit. Play by play would be great.
Mhm.
But it's just like basketball for me.
So when you did play by play or even color for whether it was you or I or Rick, what was like a day in the life or even the week, or how much preparation goes into each game?
Yeah, I learned more so about preparation at URI.
Mhm.
But sometimes like so for my junior year, I really didn't um live. So I had I had a group of guys from Cranston that I didn't grow up with, but I knew a little bit in high school, and they were awesome. Some of my like good friends to this day. So they had a house and they had a fourth room, and they're like, oh Cam, they're not unlocking the fourth room. Like I don't know, but you can crash on the couch, stay here for a few days, go back, like whatever you want to do, you can come, and you're more than welcome. So I was like, all right. So I told my mom that I would pack duffel bag, like 2 duffel bags, like every week, go sleep
Yeah.
on the couch, and like be down there. So it was like easier for me to go move around. And I didn't start anything yet, so I'm like, oh, what is it gonna be like when I have to have like my suits and all this stuff and call games? And I didn't even like know what I was gonna get into. So when that time came, it was like rampant. It was like, um, making sure I'm going home and seeing some family and like all that. Like it was tough to not like tough, but it was a lot to like back and forth.
Yeah.
And once I was living there, so the second semester I lived there like full time, and they unlocked that room, which was great. And that was when I was in the process of doing Danny's documentary. And a day in the life of like a week, like for a game, preparing for a game, I would usually prepare like 2 days in advance.
Yeah.
Depending on like how often they put like the game notes and like all that stuff out. Um, it would usually be like a day before, but like if I had a few days prior to that, I would look up certain things, just kind of get a little familiar with the rosters, make my charts as far as just putting players out there, like their heights, their weights, and like their little bios, like certain things that I think I would say. And then once the game notes came out, I would add to them. And then that day, it would usually be like all day at school. And then like we get there like 2 hours, an hour and a half before the game. So I'd add some other stuff. I'd talk with my partner, whoever I was with that night, talk about some trends, talk about what we're going to talk about when we go on the air. And then the game's on, and it's different because like anchoring is very scripted, and sometimes like you can go off the cuff for sure in anchoring. And I haven't really had that opportunity yet because I'm still new, but play by play, it's like you see something happen, and that's it. You're just calling it. And basketball was so easy for me because I played the game and I knew the ins and outs of basketball. Like if I saw like a guy make the wrong read, or if a defense is leaving one side open and I was the color guy, I can be like, oh well, they're playing a 2-3 and they're extending to the shooter. That's why the whole right side's wide. Like it's just easier to commentate as a color guy, knowing the sport and playing the sport your whole life. So when I would do sports that I wasn't accustomed to, it was like, all right, I gotta like really focus in on this and like kind of study a little bit and like know like soccer, like the field. I have to know the field. I have to know the positions. I have to know why these players are doing what they're doing. It was just so new because I didn't know these sports, especially like volleyball, soccer. I knew baseball a little bit. Like I wasn't like I'm not a big baseball guy, but it's like I know sports, like similar to you. Like we know sports. It's not like you don't know like in depth, So that's where like a lot of the studying came in. But usually it was like 2 days before, hour and a half before the game, get everything in, and then once the game was over, it's like, all right, when's my next game? When can I pick another one up? And what else can I do just to keep up with it? Because like I didn't want to take a week off. I wanted to always have stuff to put on a reel for a tape, all that.
Nice. So let's talk about it. You see it behind you, Cam's Corner. So what was your vision with Cam's Corner?
I wanted to just talk with people from Rhode Island that made a name for themselves and that had like a big sports background. So Joe Mazzulla was my first guest, which I was super grateful to have.
Yeah.
Didn't think that was going to be my first guest, but it was his first season or second season as like an assistant with the Celtics. So we had a great conversation. And then like looking back, it's like night and day on how much better I am in front of a camera. But the vision was just that. It was just more so doing stuff, people from Rhode Island. And then, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, to go with Joe Mazzulla, how much, like you said, like it's night and day for where you are now. How has the transition from you or the podcast gone from that first episode to Joe Mazzulla to your most recent one? Was it CJ Miles?
Yeah, CJ Miles. So like, how much of progression I've seen in myself, you mean?
Yeah, you and the podcast. How has the podcast evolved over all these episodes?
Yeah, I mean, you said it from the jump. It's just like the quality of it. I've gotten so much more equipped on editing and putting things together and making sure it's like appealing to people. Because that's like the biggest thing with social media is like people's attention spans are so short now. So if you like I started off that one of the videos I just did, like grabbing the audience attention. Like I had a suit on, I stood up, oh, I'm in shorts. Like that's what's he talking about? Like what's going on? That kind of like grabs your attention. So that's kind of how I started making the real, like that's how I've been doing them now. Like if like I started off one of the CJ Miles one of the reels talking about like his 2K card, and then it got into like a little bit more things and flashing back from the episode. So I guess the biggest thing from progression is just the quality and like how much better I've been able to be in front of the camera without like stuttering over my words. I mean, it's natural in a normal human conversation to stutter and whatnot, but it kind of helps me get my reps into practice for like when I'm on the camera, anchoring or reporting, pacing myself, slowing down instead of being like, it's like stop, pause, and then go. But yeah, so definitely my on-camera presence, the quality of the reels and like the production of the podcast and like, especially the guests too. Like I would never imagine the guests I've had just from reaching out. And I'm sure, like the same thing with like wrestling. It's like, oh, there's no way I'm going to get this guy on my podcast. And then like they answer or their managers answer and you're like, oh, all right, we're doing it. So it just kind of happens.
Especially now, do you have goals with Cam's Corner?
I never wanted to like, I mean, obviously it would be cool to get paid for it, but I never
Yeah.
was like, oh, I'm gonna get paid for it and I want to like make it like a big production thing. I never
Right.
really
Yeah.
had that vision, but I definitely want to keep up with it. I don't want to stop doing it because I love posting. I love social media. It is tough, like if like algorithms and all that stuff it is tough at
Mhm.
times. My main priority now is my job, but um, like goals, I guess just to kind of keep up the top tier guests that I've been having on, like CJ Miles, I would have never imagined
Yeah.
having him on. Um, and I love just talking to like people in my profession that have gone through what I'm doing. Um, and like NBA athletes, like that's what I want to do. I want to interview NBA guys. I want to, maybe in the future, maybe make it NBA centric. I don't know.
Nice. Yeah.
That's kind of a goal that just, or the idea that just popped in my head right now, but that would be like the coolest thing in the world just to make it about the NBA because that's what I'm passionate about. But I had it like a lot of like the roadie guys would come on and I loved doing like the football stuff and I loved like doing YouTube in general, like making videos, like doing vlogs and stuff when I have people to film me because I don't
Mhm.
like filming myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's I don't know. I really don't know what the future holds for Cam's Corner, but I'm gonna keep doing it for sure.
And then I know you said a dream guest is Carmelo Anthony, but have you had like a favorite episode so far? And if so, like also with that, who's like that guest you want except for Carmelo? Because I know you said that in your most recent podcast you just did.
Yeah, if it's not Carmelo, it would be like Mike Breen because Mike
Nice.
Breen's like one of my biggest inspirations as far as play by play, and I've always watched him. Being a Knicks fan, I watched him like all the time with my dad. Still watch him to this day. I mean, it's kind of crazy how him and Clyde have been doing it for so long now. Um, but yeah, outside of Carmelo, it would be him, and then um, my favorite guest so far. I mean, it's tough to pick a favorite because
Yeah.
everyone's been super nice and um, like, I guess like most recently, I mean, CJ Miles was super cool, but
Yeah.
I like Cole Swider gave me a lot. Like he was somebody that gave me like a long time. Gave me like an hour and a half of just like
Mhm.
he's a super like faithful person, similar to Joe. He talked to like the ins and outs of the game. He's super elaborate on his answers. Great guy. So that was like one of my most recent ones. Cole was great. Eric Reed, the play-by-play guy for the Heat, he gave me that contact. He was
Nice.
awesome. Um, there's just so many now when I look back at it. Joe was cool. I still want to do Joe again. I really want to get in
Nice.
contact with him and like do another interview, but obviously it's tough now with
Yeah.
what he's got going on. Um, I'm trying to think of people that have given me like the most advice because those are like the things that you kind of like sit back and be like, wow, one, I just talked to this person, and two, they gave me like incredible advice. But
Right.
I guess like all the broadcasters I've talked to, like Bob Sosi, the guy, the play-by-play guy on the radio for the Patriots, Sean Grandy, radio guy for the Celtics. Tim Sinclair is the public address guy for the Bulls. Well, Drew Carter, that was probably one of my coolest ones recently too, and I think one of my best interviews too is with Drew Carter, the new Celtics TV play-by-play voice, who I
Right.
still talk to this day. I have
Nice.
a story from the parade.
Mhm.
The duck boats were going by, and Drew was one of like the last ones with the media crew. And my buddy Tom taps me on the back, and he's like, "Cam, look, there's Drew." And I'm like, "Oh, like Drew." I'm calling him over. I'm like, "Oh, Drew." And he like looks at me. He kind of like nods his head, like just like as a thinking like it's a fan. And then he sees my shirt. Oh, I had this like the white Mamba scout
Mhm.
shirt on, and because I showed him it in the podcast, and he's like, "Cam's Corner, Cam, what's up?" And then he starts chugging a beer, and I'm like, "This is awesome!" Like
Nice.
he recognized me. So yeah, any like the broadcasters or like reporters I've had on, like those probably like the coolest episodes because that's like what I want to do, and it's there. I'm grateful that they're giving that time back to me.
Yeah, like even at wrestling yesterday, some of the guys that I've interviewed, they asked me who my favorite was. I just stole like the Tom Brady, like the next one. That's what I'm gonna start saying
Yeah,
to everybody. But to go with that, let's talk about Dan Mazzulla, the impact he's had on you now. I believe you said in one of the podcasts you recently did that was it going into your senior year, he selected you to be a captain.
yeah, high school, yep.
What was like your reaction and going through your head when you were selected to be a captain?
Um, yeah, it was like Scott knows, like your uncle
Mhm.
Scott knows. It's like Danny was never a person to praise people. He was always a person like if he didn't say anything at all, like he knew or you
Yeah,
knew he was like, all right, like he appreciated like whatever I did. So like if I were to hustle on the ground, dive for a loose ball, hit a few threes, and then get subbed out quick, and I didn't get a high five, I didn't get nothing, I didn't get a look. I was like, okay, he he's like
yeah,
appreciative. Like he wasn't pouring into me. If I did something wrong, and he poured into me, like I knew that he cared. So like if I were
right.
to make a mistake or have like a slump in a game, he'd pull me out. He'd be like, "You got to be confident, shoot the ball. You got to hustle and keep working." And then he'd put me in the game like 30 seconds after
Right.
that. So like, he was very brief on what he would say. But when when he shot me a text and was like, "I want to see you in my office," I'm like, "Oh God, what's going on?"
Yeah.
He brings me in. He brings my buddy Tom and my buddy Jay, and still like my best friends to this day. And they're like, "Well, we want you guys to be the captains this year. We want you guys to run the practices, get the guys together, make a group chat, start doing like captains practice, like, just get people running and get workouts going." So when that meeting was over, I'm like, "Dude, I was telling my Tom, I was like, man, this is insane." And he's like, "Let's go, let's do it now." So we made a group chat. We were just trying to get everybody intact and geared up. And I want to say this was like in the beginning of June, like my junior summer going into senior year. It was like June. And then a month later, I'm working out with one of my shooting coaches, Chris Corsinetti, and he walked away for a minute, and I was with his son Anthony, and I would always work out with him. Yeah. So we would always work out, and then like we were just kind of like, oh, like he would never just leave. Like I mean, he was somebody like Danny. He would always be on the phone because he knows everybody, but he just kind of like walked away, and we were kind of confused, like what's going on. He was like, just shoot free throws and the workout today. I'm like, all right, that was a little weird. And so we're walking out, and I wasn't gonna ask him. So Anthony asked him, he's like, oh, what's going on? Like, what's wrong? And they diagnosed like Danny was sick. Then he went to the hospital, and they found out that like what it was. I don't know if they found out what it was that day, but they found out like he was in the hospital and he was sick and like something was wrong. So then in my head, I'm like, oh, like I don't know, like is he gonna coach? Like who's gonna coach now? They gotta put his job up. Like I was like, first I was worried about him because I wanted him to be okay, and then I was like, what's gonna happen now for the future? August comes, it's like the summer league, and one of the assistants takes over. Yeah, it was tough after when Danny was there. It was different. But when he told me that I was a captain, I'm like, all right, I'm still gonna hone this responsibility and take it like in full stride, no matter what.
Now, one of the things I think maybe probably you're most proud of is that documentary you made, Coach. Now, what was going through your thought process to decide to do a documentary? Because I don't know, I feel like we don't see those nowadays, especially like on YouTube. But you went like all in. The guests you've had, everything. So, what was the thought process, and how hard was it to get some of these guests?
Yeah, the thought process was just thinking about the family. I wanted to do something for the family and for the people that didn't get to say bye, like me and my teammates. Just being able to say bye to him, like we didn't get that during COVID because all the restrictions and whatnot. But being able to kind of send him off in a good way last year, last year was amazing. That was my thought process. I wanted to do it like that. It wasn't for like me, for like publicity for my name, which I got a little bit, which was cool and it was great, and I'm super grateful for that. But it was more so just like all the people that showed up, like they didn't show up for me, they showed up for Danny.
Nice.
I mean, friends and family showed up for me, but it was all like that gym was packed for Danny. It wasn't for me. And that's what I wanted. So one day I was driving by my high school. I can't remember where I was coming from, but I was driving by and talking on the phone with my dad. I'm like, I want to do a documentary on Danny. I want to recap his life, and I want to send him off in the way that he deserved. And I was like, this could be a great project to tackle my first year in the URI. Because at Rick, I wasn't really, I mean, I was calling games and I was getting a lot of good reps, but now that I had the internship with the sports hub and I'm getting into all these new clubs, like let's do something outside the podcast, outside of broadcasting. Let's just go all in and do something amazing. So the interviews were tough. Like I drove around like all throughout New England trying to get interviews, doing like people in like Chile and like all around the world that knew him that like played with him. I don't know if you can hear that train going by, but I'm right outside like a railroad. That's something I'm trying to adjust to in Missouri.
We can't hear anything. You're good.
No, all right. Well, that's good for the future when I'm on different podcasts. But no, like those interviews were super cool. Like it was just a different dynamic because I knew him as a player. Like when I was a player, I knew him as like my coach. I knew him as a boss. I knew him as a friend. In only like an 8-year span, these people knew him for decades and decades, and they had different stories, different outlooks on who he was as a person, a player, a dad, like everything. So that was like the best part of interviewing people, is just getting like all these new stories I didn't know about Danny and Danny's dad, Danny Sr. Like that was the coolest thing. But the process was long. It was stressful sometimes, but it all worked out. I mean, like the day I was able to put out the trailer, like the Sports Hub plugged it and they were talking with Joe, like I mentioned. And yeah, I didn't have anything at that point. All I had was that 2-minute trailer. So when I put it out and I got all that like love from it, I was like, okay, I got to keep going. I can't just stop. So that motivated me to keep doing it. And then the day of was amazing to get a standing ovation. And I said it at that day. I was like, this ovation isn't for me. It's for Danny and for what he did for this town.
Yeah.
And I have pictures of him all around my apartment because he's just the person that, I mean, outside of my family, he's the person that like really drove me, and put that like that drive factor into what I do now. All the aggression and like the passion I have for everything, it stems from him. Like I go out into the field and I'm like, all right, what can I do today to, make my presence known? It's because of him. Diving on the ground for loose balls, like just working my ass off in conditioning drills, like making sure my push up is like perfect so he doesn't make me do more. All that stuff. It just shaped me into the person I am. So I wanted to send that message to everybody. That's why I didn't really want to be in it. Because I have stories about him and stuff, but it was more so like a different perspective. That was like the idea going behind it.
The day you dropped it, or the day you had it at the Johnston Rec, the live showing, like, were you nervous? Like, what was going through your mind that day?
Oh yeah, I was nervous because there was no one there. Like no one came at like 3. Like I was like, oh, it starts at 3. There was nobody there, and it was my family walking in, like Justin, his son, and Gianna, his daughter, and her daughter, and I was like, there's like 8 people here. I'm like, oh great. But my buddy Ian Steele, who's a sports reporter and anchor at ABC6, he has been another great mentor. I have so many mentors in Rhode Island, and super helpful too. I texted him and my buddy Sam too. I was like, Sam, could you come down? Sam, and now I can call like one of my best friends to this day. He's amazing. I was like, Sam, you think you could come down and do like a little story on it? If you can't, like, it's no big deal. And he's like, Cam, I got a lot of stuff going on today. As far as stories, if I do have time, I'll let you know, but I don't think it's going to be a possibility. I'm like, all right, it's cool. Whatever. I have like the paper put articles out and they were going to do another one after it. So like I had some stuff. I just wanted to get the word out as far as, for Dan. And, social media plays a part into that, but, Ian walks in. I texted Ian too, and he's like, oh, I should be there. And I'm like, okay, great. And he comes in with the camera and there's not a lot of people there. So he pulls me and Justin to the side. He's like, can we do a quick interview for like the package we're going to do for it? I'm like, yeah, sure. That's why I got you here. So we go over to court 2 and the lights are off on court 1. So you can see the big projector, but the lights are on court 2 and 3. So people can obviously see when they're walking around. And we're facing like the banner. So when you walk into the rec, it's court 1, you go to the left, there's court 2. So I was facing like that banner and he was like in my face with the camera with the big light on it. And, asking me questions, interviewing me. Justin goes, I turn around, the place is packed. I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. People coming up to me, shaking my hand. My buddy Josh was documenting the day for me so I can put like a behind the scenes thing on it. And, he's like, did you like, this is crazy. There was like close to 400 people there. And I'm like, in the thing, I'm like, this is insane. Like, I can't believe this. I got jitters when I walked up with Justin. Justin wanted to say a few words before I did. And I wanted to put that in the behind the scenes, but Josh didn't get the audio from it. Like the camera was kind of like bugging out. So, like when Justin was talking, it was kind of like break it up, but he had a lot of nice things to say, not like only about me, but just about what Dan meant to the community. And I'm super, super grateful that he did that. And he's been somebody that I can go to too for like advice and just talk to him about stuff. And so then when I went, I'm like, I have nothing. I didn't want to have anything prepared. I just wanted to talk like from the heart because I said that's what Danny would want. Like he was never like a scripted guy. He just went with whatever it was. So I gave a little speech. I'm like, all right, and this is Coach, the legacy of Dan Mazzulla. And then it went off. And so his brother Anthony, another coach I had, another huge inspiration in my life. I don't know if he's more amped up than Danny. Like he had his moments too, but I didn't get him in like his prime, like my friend Jeremy did. Jeremy's his grandson, but Jeremy Mazzulla. One of my best friends to this day too. But I had Anthony as a coach, but again, super super supportive of what I got going on. But that day, like I think it was like the part of the documentary where I'm introducing like him getting sick and passing away, people crying like in the interviews and stuff, and just kind of explaining that process. And I know that's tough, but that's kind of what makes a documentary sometimes. And like that part happened, like, you know, it popped up like the day he got sick and all that. And someone's like, stop, stop, stop. And like, I heard like not like a scream, but it was like, I don't know, someone was like yelling for help. And I didn't see, like, Jeremy was sitting right next to me the whole time. I didn't see Jeremy. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? I turned, there's a huge huddle of people over somebody, and it's Anthony. He's on the ground, like, and like everyone's like, some people are crying. I'm like, oh my God, like what happened? And I think it ended up being like dehydration or something like that. And like he just, you know, he didn't have enough water. And like it was a lot. Like that moment in that documentary was a lot because that documentary was so new. Like no one saw anything except that 2-minute trailer. And like it's like a movie. Like but I was like, oh my God, is everything all right? And you know, he's cracking jokes and everyone's laughing and like the family was brought together. So he was okay. He ended up he was completely fine. He just I think he just had like a little moment. He was dehydrated, whatever. He wanted to stay, but he didn't want to make like a scene. So he's like, all right, well, whatever. The paramedics wanted to take him to the hospital, you know, get him the help that he needed. So he gets carted off and he goes with Jeremy's brother Jared, I think. I think Jeremy, I can't remember if he stayed or left, but regardless, like they were just like, keep going, like we want you to keep going. So I went back up there and I'm like, Anthony's okay, he's gonna be all right. We're gonna keep the film going if that's all right with everybody else. And they all started cheering. So I'm like, all right. So we resume it. And the film ends. I walk up and I'm like choking up. I'm like, this was great. I appreciate everybody for coming. I put the QR code out in the front. If anyone wants to scan it, you can scan it. Rest in peace to Coach Dan. Thank you so much. Everyone cheered again. And then someone goes over and turns the lights on. And the time on the clock was 4:22 p.m. And he died April 22nd, 2020. So if Anthony didn't have that episode, that it wouldn't have been the time when the documentary ended. So I'm thinking, like, in my head, like Danny had to be messing with him or something. For that to happen, because that was like a breath. Like I didn't know that either. I looked on Facebook after, and one of my old assistant coaches, Kyle Naregan, he posted on Facebook. He took a picture of the clock right when the lights went on, and he's like, "What are the odds that it's 4:22?" On April 22nd, 3 years after. Like it was like insane. So I was like, from that moment on, anything I do in my career, everything happens for a reason. Don't stop doing what you're doing and just keep pushing your best foot forward, because Danny's always there. And all the people that I've lost in my life are always looking down at me proud and, you know, keep going. So that was like, that day in general was like insane. Like it was absolutely incredible.
Nice. So to go back to you, when you went from Rick to URI, what was it like transferring? Was that something that you wanted to do, or you knew it would better you in the career that you wanted to go for?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, URI's programs, I knew that they were better than Rick's. Like respectfully, not like nothing, not docking Rick or anything like that. It was just a bigger program. You know, Rick's Division III, URI's Division I. They have a bigger facility. I mean, I wanted to go to URI from the jump, but during COVID, I got waitlisted at URI. And I was like, you know what? I just want to commit to a school. I want to hit the ground running and just go. And if I have to transfer, like I transfer my credits and do that. So after my sophomore year, I was thinking, I was telling my mom, because she works at CCRI, and we had a few benefits that would help me go to URI, and I wouldn't have to like pay as much. But she was like, you know, if you want to do that and that's something you want to do, like we'll talk about it. And I showed her all the programs and I showed her like what I would be doing. And she's like, all right, let's do it. So I got the internship with the sports hub, and then I found out I got accepted into the sports program like that week. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to take this. I'm going to take it in full stride. In that summer preparing for it at the sports hub, I was like, man, I really don't have a lot of stuff right now. I mean, I have Cam's Corner, I have like the tapes from Rick, but like, I feel like I could be doing so much better. So once I got down there and I was doing stuff, I'm like, all right, this was like the move I needed to make. And I was happy that I did it.
So tomorrow's a big day for you. Are you ready?
Yeah, I was born ready. I was born for this. I was born to be on camera. And I'm glad that I figured that out during school. So now that I can take this in full stride with the job, it's nerve wracking, but like not in like a bad way. It's like the only thing that I keep thinking about is the anticipation building up to like what's to come, what's gonna happen. You know, I'm getting chills just thinking about it, because I hope this is a first step into getting to like my end goal in the NBA. And the people around me know that. They know that I want that, and they want to see me succeed, so I have the best possible route to get to that point. So yeah, I'm always ready. I'm always ready to take on whatever opportunity comes my way.
Well, Cam, I want to thank you for doing this, but first, I end every interview the same. I know you're young and you still have plenty more time to go, but the day you're officially retired with sports, whatever you do in your career, what do you want your legacy to be remembered for?
My legacy. I think if people can just learn, like if they can just take something away from what I did, that's all I care about. Not like, oh, he's doing all these big games, or if that comes down in the future, or if, oh, he's talking to these athletes. If they can learn something from, like, I'm from the smallest state in the country. If they can learn from me in any kind of way, that would be the coolest thing. Like somebody like Joe, like coming from the same exact town as me, and being so close with like the family when I was a kid, and like a lot of people were in the town, but like that inspired me. Like, I mean, I always had that drive to keep going because of Dan, but to see Joe at the level that he's at, it's like it's not impossible to get to where you are. And the way he holds himself, like, yeah, he's a great coach and he knows a lot about the game of basketball, of course, but the way he holds himself and talks is just like super inspiring, and he's super, super faithful. So like, and that goes into how he operates as a coach. So if people can take stuff away from me, not only as a broadcaster, but as a person, and be inspired by the way that I speak, I think that's what I would want to be remembered as, just somebody that's super motivated and driven to get to any kind of level that, you want to get to.
Right. Well, thank you, Cam, for doing this. I appreciate everything. It's crazy, man. I remember I was introduced to you through Paige once you interviewed her, but then senior year you came to my high school, man. So thank you for everything.
Hey, thank you, Chris. I appreciate you for having me on. I'm super excited to see what your career unfolds to, because I know you're putting in the work every day, and you're talking to the people that are based around what you want to do, wrestlers and all this stuff that you want to get into. You're putting in work every day that a lot of people aren't, as far as like big sports that aren't, like a major sport. Like it's tough to want to get into things that aren't really globalized as big as like basketball or football or hockey, whatever. But you're taking it in stride. You're putting it on the map, and you're making sure that people are aware of you. So, like I said, stay true to yourself, keep working, because the good things are going to come.
Thank you, Cam. And thank you, everybody, for watching this episode. And this was Best for Business.